checking connection. You are now live. Awesome. Alright. Hey creatives, welcome to the third episode of Creative Block, a podcast made for the creatively curious where I, Danielle Como, share my advice and experience as one creative to you, to another creative. I've been having a lot of trouble getting this on YouTube Live, so in the third week I've just given up on YouTube Live and switching to Instagram. I may be going on Twitch for this in a few, maybe next week, or I may just stick to Instagram Live, just depends on how today goes. So in today's episode, I found a subreddit that is talking about, transitioning to digital art as you are a traditional artist, and I think that's something that a lot of traditional artists kind of struggle with, is breaking that initial barrier of getting into digital art, especially whenever you've been raised on nothing but like pen, paper, pencil, that sort of stuff, or even paint. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. I'm going to try to keep it fairly focused and streamlined, especially since the first time it was about mojo, originality, and what it's like to be an artist, and then last week was more of a rant on exposure. If you haven't seen that, you should. And I'm really going to try to keep this streamlined. That way I'm not here talking for like an hour, hour and a half, and then have to condense it down to 15, 20 minutes, which is what you see as, or hear as the final product. So, on to it then. I found a subreddit post that reads, "How can I, a traditional artist, transition to digital art?" It says, "Thanks to the kind people here who helped me out on a post of mine, here I got myself a new graphics table once more. Now I'm quite in a conundrum since I'm starting out to this medium. I'm really good at using pencils and manage to do well with them, and seem to fare well whenever I decide to branch out, as long as it is physical and all of that. Since I have spent time with art already, I understand the basic know-hows and process of making an artwork. However, I haven't found my standard style, etc. So I'm all over the place, and the digital medium is just making it more difficult. So how do I find that sweet spot to get myself into the groove of digital art making?" So that's something that I can relate to. I know whenever I first started out going digital, I had a really hard time, I guess, just translating my brain to digital from traditional, if that makes sense. Like, being raised on just doing paper, pencil, markers, everything like that. I'm going to take my glasses off because there's a glare. And transitioning from that to a screen, to a software program, using a stylus if you have one, it can be intimidating, and even more so if you're using a tablet and if that's the first thing that you're going to. I know for me, it was really, really tough breaking into digital art because I would have a tablet. It was a Wacom tablet that was only like $50, so it was like really base model stuff. And it was really difficult for me to do anything digital because I couldn't see what I was drawing, like as I was looking down at it, and that's just how I operate. And so it took me probably a good 6 months to a year to finally break into digital art, just to get over that mental barrier of needing to actually look down at what I was drawing. And I think that's a really difficult part about transitioning to digital art, especially now that there's so much pressure to get into digital mediums, because that's where everyone is going. And now if you have an artwork or a commission or a business that comes and says, "Hey, I want you to do this for me," they are almost always going to demand a digital file format. And whenever you see digital artwork online, you see it's really clean, and that's just not what the product is. If you were to scan your physical copy into the computer, it just doesn't look as clean as it would if you were to make it on a actual software or anything like that. So how to get over that? There's obviously, you know, taking classes and just practicing and stuff like that. But I know for me, what really, really helped I would find a muse or an artist that I really admired that was already doing digital art. And if they had any interviews, which rarely they do, if they had any interviews, I would watch them. If they had any how-to tutorials, I would watch them. And I would get really, I would get aggravated at the fact that any of their tutorials just had a blank sheet and they were going at it, because the way that my brain was programmed was I would need to scan the physical copy into the computer and then pretty much trace the lines with the pen tool and whatever software I was using. And if you aren't able to do that, if you can't do that for whatever reason, it just gets really difficult and really aggravating really, really fast, especially whenever every tutorial you're watching, they always have a stylus or a tablet of some sort. And if you don't, then the question then becomes, well, I can't do this thing. Which that is false, because you can still do digital mediums, even without a stylus or a tablet. You can do, I know it's probably not going to be your same style or the way that you normally do stuff, but you can use shapes, and even though it wouldn't be in your style, it allows you to experiment with a style, and you may get like really cartoony, rough looking figures or environments or whatever you're making, but it's a good step in the right direction to get there, to become like a full-fledged digital artist. And I think that's something that's overlooked a lot, because whenever you are first starting out and you look at how do you draw digitally or paint digitally, and you have that barrier in your mind where you have to like be down and looking at it, and if you don't have a tablet, if you don't have a stylus, if you don't have a touchscreen monitor, then it just becomes really, 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 really difficult. And I think that's where we need to come up with some sort of maybe this is something that I could do, or any of the other artists that are watching this, but coming up with some sort of class of how to break that, and how to really figure out, what do I want to say? How to really figure out how to draw and draw the same quality that you have been doing, while breaking a mindset that you have taught yourself and been taught for, you know, the past however many years that you are an artist for. And that's really difficult. So how to transition from traditional to digital art is a problem, and it's an obstacle and a challenge, and it's one of those things that I think that if you don't have the equipment, like a tablet or a stylus or a touchscreen computer or what have you, if you don't have that to break into it, I think it just becomes an even longer process, and I think that may be a class idea that we may have. That is one. And on the same subject, or kind of same subject, there's a question that's posed: how to be comfortable with making art for yourself and not for money, which I can definitely relate to that, especially if you are having a creative block where you want to just create and create and create, but all these other people are commissioning you for stuff, and the money is good, but you're just not feeling the vibes with what they want you to make. And that becomes a question of, do I tell them, hey, it's going to take longer because you're having that creative block, or is that something where you just grit your teeth and hope you can make something, knowing that it's not going to be your best quality just because you're not into it. And like this person, here, I'll read you their story. So, they asked the question how to be comfortable with making art for myself and not for money. They say a majority of my life was filled with friends and family who assumed I did art all the time because I'm building towards a career in art. Though I believed a job in art would be my dream, I have found that I don't enjoy the stress of it, and it ruins what I enjoy most about the hobby. After I learned college wasn't an affordable option, I was having extreme guilt about taking time to work on my art hobby. I became embarrassed because capitalism had taken over my brain and demanded that if I wasn't using my time to make money, then the task was useless and wasteful. I started removing art from the internet, and when I would see my physical art laying around, I had the sudden urge to destroy it or hide it, or for fear I was leaving myself or someone else that that I am an artist and artists sell their art. It feels so silly that I'm embarrassed about not wanting to monetize my hobby to the point where I can't even enjoy my hobby. I think it has to do with my own work perception of others, both non-artists and artists, so that's why I'm using this platform to reach out. Has anyone decided that they're not going to tie money to their art or hobby, or decided to not make money with the primary goal behind their art? How can I become more comfortable with the idea that art doesn't have to be made for money? Um, that is a fantastic question that I'm really glad that this person asked. Because I think, especially in today's world, like artists get swung around between three different things. In my opinion, I put them in three different categories. You have potential clients who want your art and they want to pay with you for exposure. And if you want more on that, listen to last week's podcast because I went on an exposure rant. Or rant on exposure. So that's one category. Second category would be those that just let go of monetizing completely and turn it into nothing but a hobby to the point that they refuse commissions, they don't want to put their stuff in the gallery, they just want to do it for the joy of having it and creating it. And then the third, which are those that do have art careers and they enjoy doing art careers and they get the money out of it, but at the same time you lose the hobby aspect. So you can still make money on it, but your passion may be dampened, just dampened, tarnished. your your passion for it may decrease. I'm trying to think of words to use here, and I just can't. It's Wednesday. I'm sorry. Um, and their passion may be moving on. But it's difficult because you have art, this thing that you love, and the stress of having to figure out what you can do to make more money off of it because you love doing it so much. And especially with today's world, if you're in modern America specifically, you have to make money in order to live at all, and prices are just increasing. So if you're spending time on a hobby, then why not try to make money on it, right? And I totally get where this person's coming from because that's something that I know I struggled with whenever I was first getting into the freelance and contracting world. Um, is creating art on a regular basis on top of the job that I already had, and the stress of having to price it, one, and two, meet the demands of clients where they have this picture perfect image in their head of what they want, and they describe it to you, and it gets lost in translation, it doesn't come out how they want it, and so they want you to redo it, and then you just wasted hours and hours of work, and you're not going to get compensated for it. Which is exactly why you do non-refundable deposits if you're doing commissions, but I digress. Um, and that's a real struggle that I know artists have. I've had it, and the idea that you have to be comfortable with making art for money versus making art for yourself and having to choose between that, I think it's absolute hell that an artist has to do that. But if they dedicate so much time to art to the point that um, they don't have the time or resources to dedicate to other things, I think that's where it really becomes it is a problem. That's where it really becomes a problem, because then you have this hobby, you're doing it, you enjoy it, you love it. You're not taking commissions, you're not doing it for money, but you're losing all this time and money that you could be making for it. Um, Not to mention, there's just the intrinsic value of art, of how can you really put a price on it, especially with everything that the artist makes. I'm of the group that thinks, and like every little bit of art that an artist makes, part of their soul's in it. And I mean, that's just what I believe. But having to monetize on that or put a price tag on that is a huge stress on its own. And having to figure out if you're comfortable with that, and if you're comfortable with telling people that they owe you money for something that has sentimental value to yourself. I can't speak today. I'm so sorry. Has sentimental value to yourself can be really difficult to do. And I've definitely been in the place where this person is, where I've looked at my artwork and I've just been really pissed off at the fact that I have to try to figure out a price for it. And I know how difficult that is, and I sympathize with this person. And the idea that you're so stressed out about that you don't even want to create anymore, and it's really, really sickening. And I think that's something that every creative at one point or another has to face, especially because for people who aren't artists, they see artwork and they want it to hang up on their wall. They want to listen to it. If it's music or something, they want to play it. If it's a video game, and they want access to it because they can't make it because they are not artists. And the stress that comes with knowing that is the potential client, what have you, talks to you and says, "Hey, I want this," and you think, "Okay, I can do that," and then you have to get inside their head, and you always have that fear of, if it's not up to their expectations, if it's not exactly what they want, and if they're that kind of client that's super, super picky, which I have my own thoughts on, but if they're one of those clients that's super picky and they see the finished project that you put so much time into, and then they tell you, "No, that's not at all what I wanted. I'm not paying you until you give me what I want." And there are clients like that. I've had a couple of them. It's really hard to get into that creative groove and get your mojo back and enjoy what you're making, because there are so many other factors that are stressing you out about it. So I don't think you can really ever become comfortable with making art just for yourself or just for money, or like this person making art just for themselves and not for money, just because of how our society is structured today, where you have to make money on your time some way or another. Otherwise, unless you have a very comfy job, you're not going to be able to keep up those monthly expenses. So having to create for money, I don't think any artist will be 100% comfortable with, just for the fact of its sentimental value. And alternatively, making art solely for yourself is challenging, because while you enjoy it, you're stressed about your finances because you may not be bringing in as much income as you want. Or making art for yourself and someone wanting to pay you for it, and you either put so much sentimental value on it. I really can't speak today. Sentimental value on it that you can't think or even put a ballpark price on something, or you just don't feel comfortable selling it just because you love it so much. Like, I know I have a painting it's an owl painting, and that one I don't think I will ever sell just because I absolutely love owls, and I love how that one came out, and it was a new technique, and I've had quite a few people that have seen it, and they say, I really, really want that. And I have to think, okay, I could sell it, make a lot of money, or I could keep it because I love it so much. And there's always the thought of, well, I could just recreate it, but it really loses its value if you just recreate it, which that's one of the reasons that I don't do prints. I just do signature signature paintings and drawings, and I don't copy them, just because I don't want there to be another one like it, you know. And obviously people could take a picture and copy it themselves, but having to remake something for money, for monetization, is really stressful. So I don't think, to answer this person's question, I don't think that they can really be comfortable with it unless they are, well, even then, I don't think so. Anyway, I think there's really no happy medium between being comfortable for making art for yourself and not for money, or vice versa. I think that's a difficult thing every artist has to do. That's in lighter news, I don't know if any of you guys have checked it out, but there's Unreal Engine has made a new, I don't know if you would consider it an update or just a new feature to the engine entirely, but if you haven't checked it out, you should totally look at Unreal Engine's PS5 graphics engine, or search Unreal PS5 new graphics engine, and it should pop up, because they've made it to where like it gets like super specified, and on like the graphics in the game it looks live action, and they explained it, and I only watched the video once and I haven't read anything, so this is all just from memory from watching a 5-minute video. But it was pretty cool because they had all these live action graphics, and they were talking about how it works, even because it was all animated what am I trying to say? It was all computer generated, but it looks live action because they added a new feature where on like so you have a triangle on the graphic, like say like just a cubic centimeter of whatever graphic or screen, and within that are like a trillion tiny triangles that are all like mirroring off each other, so it makes for like breathtaking, like, I kid you not, it looks like you could reach into the screen and it's there, like it's real life, and it's a video game. So if you haven't checked that out, do it. That's going to be the subject of next week's podcast. I'm going to try to get off of these, I don't even know what you call it. I really wouldn't call it a rant. Last week was definitely a rant, but I'm going to try to move more towards like industry updates and all the cool stuff that's happening out in the world rather than these subreddit things. I'm trying to include more of that. But if you're a creative and an artist, performer, musician, anything at all, if you're a creative and you want to be on the show, please reach out to me. You can comment, direct message, email info@litstudiocomo.com. Just let me know that you want to be on the show, because I would love to have someone. That way it's not just me talking / rambling the entire time. So if you would like to be on the show, rather just to BS, rather to just talk about anything, or if you have something that you want to share with others, go ahead and let me know. Some way or another, just say, hey, I want to be on the podcast. And we will get you on, because I would love to have you, and I'd love to talk to you. Other than that, there's really nothing left for this podcast. I'm going to try to keep them short and simple, under 30 minutes. Okay, I'm at 24 minutes and 15. Yes. So we're going to try to do that. Next week, also, we're going to be moving to Twitch. So instead of Instagram, sorry if you hear the lawnmower outside, but instead of Instagram Live or YouTube Live, we're going to be on Twitch Live for next week. So join me there, 12 p.m. Central Time, and I will have a link and everything like that ready by tonight. So until then.